Good morning. Welcome to Westbridge Church. My name's Jeremiah. I'm one of the pastors here. It's awesome to have everybody with us this morning. I want to say hello to everybody joining us online. Hello to those of you in a parent viewing room. That's a great option if you have small kids you prefer to keep with you during the service. And then those of you sitting in our cafe, thanks for joining us there as well. Real quick, before we jump into the talk, I've been saying this for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I'm going to say it again one more time. Thursday night service. I know John just said it on the video, but here's the deal. We want to make sure that we're fully staffed with volunteers across all of our services. Last week I mentioned we had so many volunteers jump from Sunday to Thursday that now we need more help with Sundays. Kind of shot ourselves in the foot there. So if a few of you could actually stick around on Sundays, that'd be great too. And so the service schedule kicks off in 2 weeks. So next Sunday, online only, and then Thursday and 2 on Sunday, and then we'll be back to the third service on Sunday in the fall. So we'll have Thursday night and 3 Sunday mornings by the time we hit the fall. So keep all of that in your mind, but we're just asking you, man, if Westbridge Church is your church home, would you help us accomplish the mission of being people, helping people find and follow Jesus? And that means don't just show up to church, but let's continue to be the church. Don't just attend, but actually participate and serve and be a part of what God is doing here at Westbridge Church. So I want to encourage you, if you're not in a serving team, jump in. You can sign up on the app, easy ways to do it. And we're just asking you to say, man, what is it that God's given you that you could use? What are the gifts and talents or time that you have available to be able to participate in what we're doing here collectively as a faith community? So I want to encourage you to do that. Then we've been in this series called Soul Detox. We're wrapping it up today. Soul Detox is the whole idea is what are the things that tend to get into our heart, our soul, that pollute our hearts and our soul, our spirit. We're so careful about water and air and filtering those things, but oftentimes we don't filter what gets into our heart and the things that become toxic and pollute our soul. So we've talked about first week toxic thoughts, second week toxic words, third week toxic narratives. If you missed any of those, I'd encourage you to check those out online. Today we're talking about toxic materialism. Another word for that is greed, and that's an interesting topic, right? This is something that affects all of us. So before you sort of roll your eyes or you're like, oh, I knew it, here we go, or fake a power outage at home and lose internet service. Hang in here with us, okay, because this affects all of us. This message is for you if you've ever worried about saving and you felt like, man, I haven't saved enough. I don't know how much I've saved. I haven't saved anything. Or if you've ever worried about retirement, or you think, I don't know what my number is, or I should have started sooner. If you've ever blown your budget, or if you're worried that you're blowing your budget, or if you've never blown your budget because you've never had a budget, if you've ever worried about your spiritual life and giving, and you've never tithed before, you don't even know what tithe means, you're not sure God would approve of your lifestyle when it comes to your spending, you wish you were more generous. If you've ever worried that you haven't taught your kids well enough when it comes to money or saving or giving or generosity or been a good example for them regarding money, if you've ever worried that you're not in a house yet and you're afraid prices are going up, if you're worried because you're in a house and you're afraid prices are going down, if you've ever stared longingly at Zillow while eating ramen and just going, someday, if you've ever purchased a car and felt immediate buyer's remorse, if you have a car and it's broken down and you didn't have the money to fix it, if you've ever taken a huge, massive risk and built a church building and gotten in it and been in for only 5 months only to have COVID hit and been told you got to shut the whole thing down. Anybody? Just me? Okay. If you've ever worried about the economy as a whole, tariffs, stock market, been worried about finances in any way, lift your hand nice and high. Okay, yeah, congratulations, you're human, right? Welcome to the human race. This is why this topic is so important, because when it comes to money, finances, resources, all of these things, there's a lot of emotion around this. And you're like, man, there's anxiety around this for us, isn't there? And you're like, there wasn't until I got here, thanks. And so here's the reality. Materialism creeps in. Because of the fears that we have, the insecurities we have, the anxieties that we have, our tendency is to go like this. And materialism sort of creeps in very subtly. It's a lot like glitter, right? You don't realize how much it's there until everything is sparkly and you don't know why. And so you can see why this topic of money and materialism can be toxic for us. At the same time, you should know this: generosity cultivates happiness. The Apostle Paul, when he's traveling around, and you follow his journey in the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 20, he's leaving Ephesus for what will probably be the last time. He knows he's not going to return. He's giving a final tear-filled farewell to his friends. And the last thing he wants to leave them with, I mean, of all the things he could say to them, this is what he wants to leave them with. And he's saying farewell. It's a very emotional narrative. And he says, I've lived my life trying to be generous. He's not bragging. He's just reminding them this is the best way to live. And here's what he would say to them. He says, you should remember the words of the Lord Jesus. It is more blessed to give than to receive. What a fascinating final thought that he leaves with his Ephesian friends. And this word blessed means happy. That happiness is cultivated by, it's the outcome of how we live our life. And what Jesus is saying is that people who have chosen to order their life around generosity live happier lives. So that's really good news if you're like, I don't know if I'm really a Jesus person. I don't know where I stand with that. If maybe you just came across us on YouTube and you're like, what is this place? Maybe a friend invited you, or you're just like, I'm trying to figure out what I think about God, church, faith, whatever label you put on it. The reality is that this is still really good news because you should live a generous life. Even if you don't profess faith in Jesus, living a generous life will make you a happier person. And we know this is true. People who have chosen to live open-handed, generous lives just tend to be happier people. And so let me ask you another question. What would you do if you won the lottery? Haven't we all sat around with friends and talked about this at one point or another, right? In 2005, Brad Duke won the lottery. He immediately set a goal of investing his money and growing his net worth to $1 billion. And since that time, he's grown considerably. He's on his way to accomplishing that goal. Now, another guy, Michael Carroll, won $15 million back in 2002. He was 19 years old. And he spent his money on partying, bling jewelry, tacky vehicles, and over-the-top gifts for family and friends, and he blew through all of his money very, very quickly. Now he's bankrupt. And that's the norm. 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 to 7 years. Even though that's the norm, we would all love a shot at winning the lottery, right? Now, every once in a while, someone says to me, okay, if someone from Westbridge actually won the lottery and decided to give a chunk of that to the church to help pay for phase 2, would you actually take that knowing where it came from? And I would say yes, without hesitation, 100% yes. We would. We would, yeah. I'm not saying, like, some of you, all you heard today was like, okay, the pastor said we should play the lottery today, so that's what I'm going to do. So what would you do if you won the lottery? Let me be honest with you. In many, many ways, we've already won the lottery. In fact, Warren Buffett would say, if you live in the United States of America in the 21st century, you've won the ovarian lottery. See, I was born in 1980. Okay, in 1980, there were 4.4 billion people in the world. Imagine a giant vat with 4.4 billion lottery tickets, and one ticket comes out, and it's got all of my information and data on it, right? Gender, race, nationality, passions, opportunities, access to education, health, parents, IQ, personality, abilities, region of the country, right? All of that was on one ticket. I was born February 2nd, 1980, Muncie, Indiana. Come on, Hoosiers. And though I didn't realize it at the time, I had won the lottery. I was born in the United States of America. I didn't get to choose that. 15% of our world is considered a developed country, high level of technology, infrastructure, relatively stable economy. In America, we have more than enough food. We have access to clean drinking water, lots of entertainment options, freedom to say and do things that many people around the world are not allowed to say or do. Lots of opportunities to make money, all because of where we were born. I also won the parent lottery. I was born to 2 loving parents who loved me way more than my other siblings, which they told me quite often. They taught me the value of hard work. In fact, they provided a constant foundation for me, a faith foundation. They've always been together. This summer, they'll celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, it's amazing. That's the family I was born into. I didn't choose when I would be born. I didn't choose where I would be born, the opportunities I'd be given, the access to education I received. Now, that's a little bit of my story, and each of us has a story, and whether you realize it or not, or want to acknowledge it or not, we've won the lottery in many areas of life. That's nothing to be proud of, nothing to be arrogant about, because we didn't choose any of it. In fact, we believe this, that everything I have has been entrusted by God. It all comes from Him. Everything we have is a gift from God. Warmth and sunshine is a gift. We actually get to experience that 2 weeks out of the year. It's amazing. Relationships are entrusted to us by God. Opportunities are entrusted to us by God. All of our resources are entrusted to us by God. Followers of Jesus, we don't just view our blessings in life as some random thing or good luck. We see them as something God has given us. They've been entrusted by God. And just as we shouldn't feel guilty because we have extra, we also shouldn't feel proud because we have extra. Everything we have has been entrusted by God. So if we're going to develop a plan for our resources that honors God, then we've got to first recognize what we've been given. And our challenge is we mistake possession for ownership. We think that because it's in our hands, we're actually the owners of it all. And sometimes we look at all that God has entrusted to us and we start to view it as our own. That's why I love the prayer of King David in 1 Chronicles. David is dedicating land for what will one day be the temple, and he brings this prayer along with the rest of the nation of Israel, and this is his prayer. David says this, "Wealth and honor come from you alone, for you rule over everything. Power and might are in your hand, and at your discretion people are made great and given strength. Oh, our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name." And then he asks this amazing question. He says, "But who am I and who are my people that we could give anything to you? Everything we have has come from you, and we give you only what you first gave us." God, we're trying to bring something to you, but the reality is we recognize the only reason we have anything to give is because you first gave it to us. We simply return as an act of worship what you first put in our hands. Later on, James, the brother of Jesus, would put it in these words. He says, "Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father." As followers of Jesus, we just believe every good thing in the world is a gift. Life is a gift. Sometimes it's easy to forget that. When you're the one that's working hard and you're the one setting the alarm and you're the one getting up early and developing your skills. But the reality is there's so much of this that was just on your lottery ticket that you didn't decide. And that's what early on in Israel's history, Moses warned the Jewish people. If they ever became wealthy, if they ever got extra, if they ever had margin, they need to remember this is a gift from God. This is the way Moses would say it. He says, he did all this so you would never say to yourself, "I have achieved this wealth with my own strength and energy." Remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you the power to be successful. And because we're surrounded by so many gifts, it's really easy for us to lose sight of that, of how blessed we really are. And most of us are only reminded of the gifts we have when we bump into people without those same gifts. And so each week during this series, we've been looking at filters, filtering our toxic thoughts and our toxic words and our toxic narratives. So what are the filters that we can apply to our lives to help so that greed and materialism don't become toxic in our souls? And these are two simple filters that we can use for every single one of us. Two simple filters. The first one is this. What have I been given? God, when I look, what's in my hands? What are the resources, the time, the energy, the opportunities, all of the things? What have you entrusted to me? What have I been given? And particularly, what are the financial resources that I've been given, that I've been entrusted? What have I been given? And secondly, how will I manage it? What have I been given? How will I manage it? See, Jesus told a story to help illustrate this filter. Here's what Jesus teaches. Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. And then he told them a story. And this is a great line, isn't it? Life is not measured by how much you own. Don't we need to be reminded of that? Sometimes we live as if our self-worth is identical to our net worth. And Jesus says that's just simply not the case. Here's the story. He says, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." And then he said, "I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, 'My friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night. And then who will work to get everything you worked for?' And the answer is somebody else." Isn't that amazing? All of the things that you've worked your life for, all the things that you have accumulated and acquired and achieved, all of this stuff that you have that you're like, this is the stuff. I finally was able to purchase this. I finally was able to acquire this. And then one day your kids are going to sell it in your front yard for a nickel. Isn't that good news? And here's what we discover over and over and over again through all the scriptures. I mean, so many scripture writers remind us, you can't take any of it with you. It all stays here. All you can do is send it on ahead by how you invest in things with eternal significance. So Jesus closes this whole story with this line. He says, yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. See, Jesus doesn't call him a fool because he's wealthy. He calls him a fool because he didn't know why he was wealthy. Jesus didn't call him a fool because he had extra. He called him a fool because he never bothered to figure out why God had entrusted him with extra. In other words, here's what Jesus is saying. This guy represents a total and complete loss because he can't take any of it with him when he dies, and he never sent any of it on ahead because he just hoarded it all in this life. A total loss, a huge regret. In other words, our net gain will be zero if we spend our whole lives acquiring things that we can't take with us. You can't take any of it with you, but you can send it ahead. You can invest in things that have eternal significance. And this is the assumption of consumption. If it comes to me, it must belong to me. Right? Jesus defies our definition of ownership. Instead, Jesus says this, if it can be taken from you, you never really owned it to begin with. That's a better definition of ownership. And generous people don't behave like owners. When you're an owner, anytime that what you own gets threatened, you go like this because it's like, wow, my fear and my insecurity and my anxiety, I need to make sure that I hold on to what I own. But when you are the manager, you live like this. Whatever has come to me, I'm just responsible to manage it well. What have I been entrusted? What have I been given? How will I manage it? What have I been given? How will I manage it? They recognize just because it comes to me doesn't mean it's all for me. Now, I'm responsible to manage it and leverage it for the good of God's kingdom. So when it comes to what we've been given, how are we going to manage it? How are we going to leverage it for something bigger than ourselves? And if we are not careful, we will start to live with the assumption that we are the owners and everything we have is entrusted for our consumption. Now, this part is really important as well. It's easy to listen to this and think, okay, God must be against wealth. God doesn't want me to be wealthy. That's not true. The problem isn't wealth. The problem is that most people who have wealth, who have margin, who have extra, never take the time to evaluate why God has entrusted it to them in the first place. So maybe there's something more than using it for myself. Maybe God has blessed me to be a blessing to others, to make a difference in the world. Maybe my money is a tool to invest in something eternal. What have I been given? How will I manage it? If you're going to manage it well, you've got to develop a plan. So some of you are thinking this, dude, I'm not a planner. My spouse is a planner. I'm not a planner. And let me just say this to all of you non-planners, okay? As a fellow non-planner, all right? You have a plan. You just don't know it. That's the reality. You have financial habits, which means you have a plan. You just haven't written it down. And here's what I can tell you. Everybody has a plan. If you don't know what your plan is, it's probably a bad plan. If you're like, I don't know where it's going. Here's why I know that. You have never drifted in a good direction financially. I would bet that none of us have woken up one day, looked in our bank account, and went, I didn't know I had that much in there. That's awesome. Way more than I was expecting. Oh, that's great. I just drifted into that. I'm guessing many of us have woken up and gone, oh shoot, I thought there was more. Right? We drift towards unhealth. We plan towards what is healthy and we drift towards what is unhealthy. If you have poor financial habits, you're working a plan. You just haven't written it down. And so, if you live like most Americans, here's what your plan looks like. Live, save, give. This is what your plan probably looks like. This is what most of America looks like. Okay, as soon as I get paid, then I'm going to spend. I'm going to live, I'm going to pay my bills, go out to eat, spend on entertainment, whatever. And then if there happens to be any left after that, I might save a little. And then by some miracle, there's a little bit left over after that, then I might come to church and tip God. Thanks for the eternal life. Here's the $5. That was really snarky. Sorry. This is what happens when I go off script of my notes. All right. And here's how the statistics tell us this. The average American spends about $1.18 for every dollar that they make, which is why we have a debt problem. And so instead, what most of us do is this. God, if you could just get that up to $1.20, that extra 2 cents is yours. I'm gonna bring that to you every time. And rather than increasing my lifestyle so that I can somehow figure out how to be generous, here's what God asks us to do. He simply asks us to reverse this, to flip the script and to give and then save and then live. That I would give first out of what God's given me, which means I might have to actually diminish my lifestyle in some way, but my faith will grow. I'll make an impact in the world. I'll be a happier person. But I can live on less. And instead of going, okay, I'm spending $1.18 for every dollar, what if I said, you know what, God, first, every dollar that I make, I'm gonna give a percentage back to you first. And then I'm gonna save a percentage. And then whatever I have left, I will cause my lifestyle to fit into what that is. And you know what you experience? Joy from giving, peace from saving, and then you don't have this anxiety. You just experience happiness because you give, save, live, give, save, live. Now, if you've been attending Westbridge for more than 6 months, you've heard give, save, live. The first time you heard it, you're like, oh, I've never heard that before, that's great. Second time, you were like, I think I know what he's gonna say, give, save, live. Third time, you were like, give, save, live. I'm writing it down before he gets there, gotcha. And when you start writing it down and you start saying gotcha, that's when I start saying, got you. Because now you know it. That's my whole goal, is that you know it before I even say it. Give, save, live. I want my kids to do this. I think this is the best way to live. I think that when you do this, you experience so much peace and joy and contentment. For followers of Jesus, we have clear instructions. Give back to God first, before we spend on ourselves out of what he's entrusted to us. This is a declaration of dependence on God and not my money. And for followers of Jesus, the instruction is very, very clear. It's called a tithe. You're like, I don't even know what that is. It's simply a word that means tenth or 10%. And so throughout the scriptures, this is what God asks his followers to do. Take the very first 10% right off the top and give it back to God through your local church. Now, I don't know why 10%. I couldn't tell you the theological reasons behind it. Perhaps it's just the right percentage that keeps greed and materialism from being toxic in our hearts. But here's the intention behind it. This is what Moses would give to the follower, or to the first century Hebrew nation. He says, make an offering of 10%, a tithe. Bring this into the presence of God. And then here's the reasoning behind it. He says, in this way, you will learn to live in deep reverence before God as long as you live. In other words, in your worldview, it puts God in his appropriate position in your worldview. And all of a sudden, your stuff isn't elevated above God. Your security is not found in how much you have. Your security is always in God. He takes his appropriate place in your worldview. You live in deep reverence before God, knowing when I give to God, God's my provider. He's the one who takes care of me. In other words, every time we do this, it forces us to answer this question. What have I been given? How will I manage it? What have I been given? How will I manage it? From a spiritual perspective, every time you do this, this is a declaration of faith in God. I'm going to give to you first and trust that you'll provide for me to live on the rest. And a very practical perspective, every time that you give back to God through your local church, you're making an eternal investment in what God is doing through our faith community, right here at Westbridge Church. Now, here's what I know about most of us. If we were to experience trouble financially, whether it's massive debt layoff, we want to sell a house, we're facing bankruptcy, someone cheats us out of money, whatever that is, almost all of us at some level would pray and ask God to get involved in our finances, wouldn't we? God, I need help. Can you do something in my finances? Whenever we ask God for a job, whenever we ask him to protect us from the layoff or from the turn of the economy or to help us financially in any way, what we're doing is inviting God to get involved in our money. We're saying, God, I want you to be involved in my financial picture. So, if you think you would ever pray and invite God into your finances if there was ever a problem, why not invite God into your finances before there is a problem? And the way that you do that is practicing regular and consistent generosity. So, final thought. We've been blessed to be a blessing. What I've been given, what God has entrusted to me, he's given it to me so that I can use it to make a difference in the world. I can't take any of it with me, but I can send it ahead. God doesn't want something from you. He wants something for you. Faith, freedom, peace, the peace that comes from knowing you didn't squander the amazing blessings he gave you in only the pursuit of pleasing yourself. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that because God's blessed you, you are a blessing to the world. And so here's what I want to encourage us with today. Before we close, let me share a couple things. First, sometimes people wonder, well, why shouldn't I just give to Christian charities out there? Why give to a church? I'd encourage you to give to Christian charities, but the model throughout the scriptures is that the first 10% goes to the church to further the ministry that the church is doing. Today, we've got an opportunity to sponsor children through Compassion International. You're going to have that opportunity in just a couple of minutes here. And the truth is, sponsoring a child is not your tithe. Our church doesn't receive a dime for this. We do it because of the mandate to help the poor that God's given us. Collectively, as a church, here's what you should know. Last year, we gave away over $300,000 to people doing incredible work locally and around the world. And we're helping you and your family continue to move forward and grow in your faith. The church is about being a part of something that is bigger than any one individual. So when you decide to give back to God first, a tithe, 10% through your local church, you're not only building something here in our community that impacts you and your family, you're also being a part of what we're giving collectively to global partners and local partners, making an impact around the world that none of us could do on our own. What we can do collectively is so much more powerful, such a bigger impact than any one of us can do on our own. So I want you to hear that. Second, I want you to hear this. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being such a generous church. We could not do what we do without you. I never want to miss a chance to just say thank you for being such a generous church. And this is the one sobering thought I want to leave us with. There's many of us who, we live this way, and we live this way on a regular basis, and you need to know, as a church, we do the same thing. We take 10% of everything that comes in, and we give it away. Because we believe in this idea of tithing. We believe in this idea of giving first, then save, and then live on the rest. But you also need to know this. There are so many people who are part of Westbridge Church, and this hasn't even crossed your mind. And I don't say this to make you feel guilty. I simply say it to make you aware. So many who love what happens here at Westbridge Church, love the receiving part of it, but have yet to contribute so that other people can experience what you've experienced. And a very sobering question to ask yourself is this. If everybody gave the percentage that I give, would this church thrive or would it cease to exist? And that's something I want to challenge each of us with. Man, I'm receiving from this church, so am I contributing as a part of it? Now, we've got such a cool partnership. Many of you know this. Almost 2 years ago, we started a construction process through Compassion International to build a church in Sucre, Colombia. One of the motivating factors for this is this. We're building phase 2 for Westbridge. And we said, man, before we build phase 2, we should build another church for someone else before we build ours. That's a big thing that we wanted to do. Now that church is built. It's done. They're doing services. They're meeting. And they have kids from the community that are awaiting sponsorship. And what's so cool about this partnership is we get the opportunity to not only build the church, not only sponsor kids, and then next year we'll have the opportunity to go on trips to see the church that our generosity collectively has been able to build, to meet the kids that we're sponsoring. I mean, it's such a cool long-term partnership. And so I want to encourage you, today you'll have the opportunity to be a part of that. Before we jump into that and give you all the details, I want you to check out this incredible story from our friend Jonathan.
I was born in the middle of an era in the Dominican Republic. There was a lot of crime, people being killed. That was our reality. My mom used to work in a factory. She was making back in the 90s, like $1 a day. I didn't eat for days. In fact, there were days that I could only eat a cookie because that was all we could get. I do remember going to the streets to sell juice and empanadas. We couldn't eat it because that was the only money to pay the place where we were. To my shame, I wanted to be a gang member. This guy selling drugs in my neighborhood had nice clothes and nice sneakers and nice shoes. And every day I was on the streets looking for cardboard to put it inside my shoes in order to walk. But the one thing that I learned to be was to be aggressive and to fight. You learn to hide your emotions. There was so much trauma and there was so much brokenness in my life. And my mom said, the reason we are in poverty is because there is not a man at home. When I got into the Compassion Center, I was 7 years old. It was my house. The church was like a house where I felt safe, where I had food. But I don't want to portray the nice story that things started to change immediately. I was fighting in the center for 5 years. I gave them all reason to keep me out. The worst fight happened when I was 12. I was buying something to eat outside of the center, and another boy came and pushed me. I punched him into the sidewalk, and immediately his eyes got open and his mouth, and so he ended up in a coma. I was taken to the Compassion Center director, and I was sitting there crying. I knew the end was coming. She took my face off and she looked at me and she said, Jonathan, why you fight? You don't have to fight. We love you. And that's the moment that I started reflecting on the path that I was taking. By the grace of God, my friend woke up from the coma. What I rightly deserved was to be kicked out of the Compassion Center, and they didn't do it. The same way Jesus died on the cross without us deserving any grace at all. That was the gospel right there. And that's the turning point in my life. After getting baptized, it's when I got many opportunities. There were godly men who portrayed me the humble heart of Christ. They saw the material for a leader to be made. I got the opportunity to join Compassion. It was a blessing to me. Right now, I serve with Compassion International as manager of supporter engagement, but I also work in the form of public relations for Compassion here in the DR. I believe God brought me to Compassion to educate people who could have a voice for those children without hope, to understand that this is beyond sponsorship itself. But it is about helping local churches in need to be what God wants them to be. And the church to be the church. Spreading hope, not only for the children that God has allowed us to serve, but the many, many more children that we're not serving right now. I am a testimony on how hope spread to me. Now is the time to give to others.
Good morning, Westbridge. God bless you. Truly a joy to be with you this morning. Praise the Lord. We have 2 seasons in the Dominican Republic. I just flew out of Santo Domingo yesterday, and it is so hot right there. And I always wonder, while at the center, at the Compassion Center, how does it feel to live in a freezer, every time they open the refrigerator at the church, I was closed because of the heat. And this morning I know. It's truly a joy to be with you. Let me go deeper into the story that you just listened, and explain you how God brought me where I am right now. My story begins with my grandparents, both witchcraft priests. They basically worship demons and a lot of spiritual darkness. We are from the west side, south of the Dominican Republic by the border with Haiti. And in this context of spiritual darkness, there was a physical, emotional, and sadly sexual abuse in our family. It was very common. My mother was abused by an uncle, ran away from family, moved 4 hours from that rural area where we were to the capital, main capital, ended up homeless. And that's how my story begins. She used to work in this kind of a gas station cafeteria, open 24 hours, which was ideal for her because she could sleep in a table in the resting time, and she could be there for 24 hours without home. She always said, I hated the evenings because I didn't know where to sleep. And that's why I said poverty found me right at the womb of my mother. Basic things pregnant moms take, like vitamin, calcium, things like that, were the ones that I missed while my mother was pregnant. She met my father in this cafeteria, saw him as a way out of her reality, sadly to realize he was married, had 4 daughters. Therefore, I was born out of his marriage. Considered a bastard. He didn't want my mom to leave her. She wanted my mom to abort. Thanks God she didn't do it. And now in this pregnancy process, homeless, I had calcium failure. And my situation was very unique because my teeth, the way it reacted is my teeth were very weak. They were coming out dark. And we were homeless, so we didn't have any money to pay for that. There's this lack of dignity in poverty. And so for me, we couldn't pay a dentist. So my mom had the great idea to talk to a professor in a public university, and the deal was, you can get a mouth, my boy, and your 20 students can practice. And they did it. So they will tie me to a bed with a force jacket and an open mouth metal machine. I know I'm describing a trauma, but is there any dentist this morning here? They never raise their hands. If there is one, I don't hate you anymore. I used to. For 7 years. And in this traumatic setting, that's how my story began. As you saw in the video, if you would have asked me, Jonathan, what was your greatest need? I would have told you, I need Jordans, Air Jordans. And the reason for that is the guys selling drugs in my ghettos, they had Jordans in the 90s. And when you're growing up in a context like that, you don't have hope. And for you, hope. For me, walking in the streets, looking for cardboard to put it inside my shoes, these guys were the role model to follow. Spending days without eating, being a dumpster diver, literally diving into garbage, looking for plastic just to buy a piece of bread, to level my blood sugar because I could spend days without eating. Without a uniform to go to school. You need a uniform to go to school in the DR. A family lent me their uniform of their boy about the same age, so I could go to school 4 hours in the morning, run back at noon, give his uniform so he could go back to school in the afternoon. And for my mother, that was very important because she always said education is a way out of the reality we're going through. It is in this context that we heard about this local church. Not about compassion. It was just about a local church serving children in need, like a Sunday Bible school through the week. And they were providing all these benefits, school supplies, shoes, food. And for us, for my mother, that meant 2 meals a day. Therefore, that nutritional need that I had was covered in this local church. Of course, we applied. We went to this local church. 2 weeks later, I'm in this program called Compassion in this local church. And one of the greatest blessings for me wasn't only the shoes that they provide. There were no Jordans, but they were enough to go to school. At least my shoes were talky and hungry. We call it hungry when they flip-flop. So these were shoes that didn't slap, didn't talk. the meal, my very first time school uniform. Well, one of the greatest blessings was my sponsor, who used to send letters. And here I have 14 years of letter writing back and forth. You're seeing a picture of my sponsor, Jamie, and Mom in her 40s. She has 4. My hero. Jamie is my hero. And God gave me the chance to meet her. But let me show you one of the letters that she sent me. Hello, Jonathan. Happy 15th birthday. It seems to be nothing important, but my father have never called me for a birthday. Because I was born out of his marriage, I never realized he hid me from his family. And I met him once a month for 5 minutes in different places, like an FBI relationship. Very weird. But she remembered my birthday every year, and that really was meaningful to me. Besides speaking about the summer, which was weird, she mentions every summer in every letter. Now I know she's from Michigan in the United States. And then in this letter, she says, keep on preaching, that is wonderful. The funny thing about that is, remember the fight on the video. I was 5 years fighting in the center. Because of the influence in the gangs from my community, I was involved in a lot of fighting. When after that fight with my friend, I got baptized. Life started to change to me. And then my church put me on preaching at the local church to other kids misbehaving. And it seems like I shared that with Jamie, and that's why she says, keep on preaching, that is wonderful. The thing is, she didn't know she was promoting heresy because I put Jesus in the womb of a fish and Jonah in the cross. Bad theology. But Pastor Jeremiah, I hope it counts that children got saved that day. Anyway, she was promoting heresy. She didn't know. But those words of encouragement, it's actually the reason I can speak in front of people now. Because of Jamie's encouragement in the church. Maybe the most important letter came in a very difficult moment in my life. One Saturday, I was introduced to my father's family through 2 of my uncles Lucas and Pedro. I didn't know my father's family, and suddenly I have family to spare. Uncles, aunts, my grandparents. I'm 14 years old. Nobody knew that I existed, and here I am. With all this family. A year passed, never talked to my father about that encounter. And then one day, met in this spot with him. He was very angry. And he said, why you did that? And I said, why did what? That's a weird way to start a conversation. And then he continued and said the worst words that I have listened in my life. He said, you and my brothers met my family without my permission. Neither you or them have the permission to get involved in my life. You have to understand you're a mistake in my life. And brothers and sisters, this is a poverty I wasn't ready to deal with. As Pastor Jeremiah mentioned, we're not given a menu to be born when we were born. I was just born. And from the very beginning, things seems to be against me. And this is a difficult moment because I learned to deal with the physical poverty I was going through. The days when my blood sugar will come down, I will take water and sugar to level up my blood sugar. I will take my shoes broken. But how do you deal with your father saying that you're a mistake? A year passed. I'm hating him, struggling in my faith. It didn't make sense that God loved me. But Jamie sent this letter. Greeting, Jonathan from Michigan. You can tell she's very proud about Michigan. We received our first sustenance note today on Thanksgiving. Today is a great day to reflect on all the things that I'm thankful for, and you are one of those that I'm really thankful for. It is because of Jesus' birth that we can have hope and assurance of eternal life after death. In Christ's love, Jamie, I cannot read everything, but 2 things in this letter. Number 1, wherever Michigan is, this woman is thankful about me. This is God's response to me in a moment that I'm struggling to think God didn't provide a father, but he did provide local church community. And overseas, someone that I call sponsor who consistently, it's not just sending money to support me at this local church, but it's putting God's love to me. And second, my hope and assurance have never came from my earthly father, but from the finished work of Jesus in the cross. Can you see the gospel? God used Jamie to point me out to this reality that has been forgiven by God's grace when I didn't deserve it, therefore who I was not to forgive my father. So I called my dad crying and said, Dad, I'm sorry to be a mistake in your life, but you have to admit that I'm the best mistake you have ever made. And that's the way God restored a relationship. I wasn't as confident as I am today. There is a picture with my father. Now we have a great relationship. We meet every other time. Remember my mom who was homeless. She's not homeless anymore. She's a professor now. Took her 10 years, but while I was at the center, praise the Lord, she was able to go to university. She's a Christian, follower of Jesus. My grandparents died as followers of Jesus too because of the gospel we received. I have a wife, 2 sons, Jonathan David and Jonathan Edwards. And that's my greatest joy. Not to get a bachelor's degree or an MD recently, but the joy to be a husband, faithful to a wife, and the joy now to that cycle of poverty has been broken to my kids. And then finally, I would like you to meet small Jonathan, little Jonathan, when I was in a package. There are packages of children this morning right here in front and outside. And Pastor Jeremiah mentioned that you as a church supported already a local church. You helped planted that church, a building, and that's a great blessing. The invitation this morning is now to sponsor those kids that you are supporting right now. There are 150 children from this local church that are waiting to be a sponsor. Just like me in this package, Jamie picked up this package without knowing that my joy now is to serve 233 churches, 63,000 in the Dominican Republic, children in poverty. Imagine a child in need found in a package, and Jamie didn't know the impact. She told me, Jonathan, I never imagined that a simple mom could make such an impact in someone's life. Let me finish with this. This invitation is not transactional. It's $43 to sponsor a child. But as Pastor Jeremiah guided us on how to do this, I don't want you to see it as just sending money to a child in need. Imagine that I will be given shoes, clothes, and food, but not the gospel. I will be a well-fed, angry man, hating my father, ready for hell. My biggest need wasn't shoes, clothes, and food supplies. My biggest need was Jesus. And that's the invitation, to bring the gospel to these children in need. And I hope that you seriously consider this invitation as an opportunity to bring the gospel to children in need. Pastor Jeremiah, if you can come. I'm deeply grateful, Westbridge, for what you're already doing by supporting this local church in Colombia. And I pray that you consider now supporting that church to bring the gospel even beyond to these children in need. God bless you and thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. My favorite part of that whole video that we watched of Jonathan's story is the compassion worker who looks at him and says, "Why are you fighting? You don't have to fight. We love you." And that is really the message of that. I mean, that's what Jesus comes into the world, and all of us have a fight, don't we? There's an angst inside of us. There's a fight against our own sin and our brokenness and our shame. And Jesus comes into the world and goes, "You don't have to fight. I love you." And that's the message of the good news. And so, number one, if you're here today and you'd say, "Man, I've never said yes to following Jesus," you need to know that's the message. That all of your sin and shame and brokenness, Jesus took that upon himself. And when he died on a cross, that died with him. His body was laid in a tomb. And according to multiple eyewitness accounts, he rose from the dead. And that means there's more to this life than this life. And death is not the end. And you've been invited to be a part of that. It's not something you earn your way into or behave your way into. You can just say yes to that invitation. We're going to pray in just a minute and close. But before we do, I want to invite those of us who would like to participate in this. We have the opportunity to sponsor kids. So almost, a little over 18 months ago, we started construction. We've finished construction on that church. Collectively, as a faith community, we paid for 100% of that project. So that's number one, amazing. Thank you for your generosity. Number two, now we have all of these kids that are a part of that faith community down in Sucre, Colombia, that we have the opportunity to sponsor. Our family sponsored a kid this morning. You have the packets, and here's what I want you to know. Every one of those packets has a QR code on it. So you can go old school, and you can fill out the boxes with a pen. That's totally cool. Rip it off and make sure that you hand it in if you want to sponsor that particular kid. Or you can just use the QR code on the front every QR code is specific to that kid. So if you scan that QR code, that's specific to that kid's packet, and you're going to sponsor that child. I would only ask this: please do not take one of the packets if you're like, don't take it home with you without signing up or dropping the thing off or scanning the code, because if you take it home and they don't get sponsored, then it takes them out of the queue. They get dropped to the bottom of the queue just because there's no way to track that. And so make sure that if you're going to take a packet, that you follow through and sponsor one of those kids. And then if you have questions, we would love to answer any of your questions. There's Matt from Compassion is going to be out here along with Jonathan in our lobby. We've got a whole space right there. If you're like, we really want to sponsor a boy, like our boys really wanted to sponsor a boy. So we've got a bunch of boys over here and a bunch of girls over here. So we've got people to help you. And I want to encourage you, man, for $43 a month, you can bring the message of the good news of Jesus and change someone's life just like Jonathan. So let me pray. And then if you would like to say yes to following Jesus, you can just agree with this prayer. God, please forgive my sins. God, forgive me for the times I've walked away from you, the fight in me. I recognize I don't have to fight, that you love me. So I want to say yes to your invitation. Make me your son, make me your daughter. Help me to put my trust in you and follow you as best as I know how from this moment on. In Jesus' name, amen.